Hey, welcome back to another episode of I'll Give It a DIY Try, where we try things that we're totally unqualified for. I have a special treat for you guys today. This is my mother's 30-year-old Dodge Stealth. She's 84 years old and just a little too old to get up and out of it. So we've taken possession of it to use as our family, giving homage to the car that she bought 30 years ago. So now that we have this car, we have a few projects we want to do with it. Otherwise, this wouldn't be I'll Give It a DIY Try. So the first thing, this is the base model. There were incredible engineering feats built on this car 30 years ago. The Dodge Stealth Twin Turbo, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT sister car. They were gorgeous for their age. What I want to do with this car is I want to give it a little more of that class. I'll pop up a picture to let you see what the fin of the Dodge Stealth had 30 years ago when it first came out. It's just a little half moon and it's not all that impressive. However, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT had this awesome fin across the entire back of the trunk. For this episode, we're going to install that. We found somebody on eBay that provided it to us for just a measly $100. This car has a 30-year-old sound system in it. Not that it doesn't sound fine for its age. No Bluetooth, and guess what? All the speakers have deteriorated where they sound awful. So we're going to put some new speakers into it. We're also going to look a little at the cosmetics. There's a few dings and dents here and some missing paint. We're going to delve into those and see if for a budget we can make them look good. So let's get at it. So now that we've procured the fin, our next step is to clean it up really nice. Get rid of the yellow, the aging. So let's get right into it.
Before we start polishing, let's look at the spoiler. Let's get a close-up and look at how dirty the clear coat is and the different places where the clear coat is missing, and you can see right through to the base coat. This is what we're going to work at to try to get nice and shiny. After watching many detailing videos, I always wanted to do a 50-50 split, being that I not only wanted to restore the spoiler, but I also wanted to polish the car. I bought Meguiar's polishing kit that comes with everything necessary to do it. I started polishing a small area next to my masking tape. Keep going back and forth, stopping occasionally to see if any areas were milky and continuing on. After many passes, I cleaned the rest of the polish off with a microfiber towel. Using a bright light, I went back and forth, and it really allowed me to see the luster pop out of the milky white. The next area has 3 spots where the clear coat has worn through. I will go over this area quite a few times and try to wear out the clear coat so it transitions smoothly to the base coat that you see through these holes. When I do a DIY project, one of the things I feel I can use because I save the money by doing it myself is to buy the right tool for the right job. And I gotta say that the right tool for this job was this Milwaukee Polisher Sander. It comes with all the necessary pads, and it just does a phenomenal job of getting into the small areas and removes all the elbow grease that it would take to polish this. So even on areas where the clear coat has cracked away, leaving the base coat, you can polish it so it looks really nice. And now the part that I've been waiting for, the 50-50 reveal. Wow, would you look at that? Look how nice it looks where we polished and how the milkiness in the dirt are still left where we haven't got to yet. It is amazing what just a little compounding can do. This is the first time I've used compound to clean old and dirty paint up. I've done it before to get rid of smeared on paint from like garages or door dings. But I gotta say that this is a very easy way of making paint look new from an old car. I've been watching YouTube channels like Ammo NYC throughout the years where they take and restore old cars. And I gotta say that the information that you pick up from those excellent YouTube channels just gives you the material that you need to take on projects like this. Now that I finished polishing the entire spoiler, I wanted to go back and do a quality assurance of the job I did. So using the light of my camera and the overhead light, I'm going back and looking at the different textures of the finish. And there's some areas that get kind of milky and white, so I'll have to go back and redo those areas. Now that the polishing looks really nice, there was one last thing that was bothering me, and it was the transitions from the old clear coat to the base coat. So just using a hard chisel, I'm going over and getting rid of the hard lines that are there. So the final stage in getting the spoiler looking perfect, well, as perfect as it can be, is to add a little polish. And then I'm using an old orbital sander polisher that I had from a Craftsman 18.2 volt toolkit. I was able to find an adapter, so I'm able to use that with my Milwaukee M18 system. After running that over it and polishing it up, you can see it looks great. It's hardly recognizable from the one I pulled out of the package.
So now that the fin is really nice and sharp and crisp, it's time to get it on the car. So let's get behind there, look in the trunk, see what it's going to take to get this thing mounted. And hopefully we don't have any problems, because I have never drilled into a car before. So I'm really nervous about this. So let's have a look at what holds the wing up. If you look on the inside, there's an R, meaning this goes on the right side. And that's very important because these nuts are offset. You can see there's already some openings. And if you put this on the wrong way and use those openings, it would overhang. But if you do it right and put them the correct way, you can see the offset pushes it back onto the lid. It's perfectly aligned with those openings. My assumption is Mitsubishi made this trunk for both the 3000 GT and the Stealth, and they made just one trunk that they can use either wing on. If you see that plug there, that goes to the brake light right here. Now I could probably plug that into this plug here and then have the back of the fin as my brake light. We should probably see if this lights up. 12 volts. I got one of these put on my M12, but we have to figure out a way of plugging those into there. Look at that. LED even. So I need to drill a hole for these studs, and I got this gauge so I can see what size I'm going to need. Too small, so 15/64 it is.
Raven.
Drill a small pallet hole.
That's pretty cool.
Was going to drill the other way, but just could not find enough room.
So it's the next morning. I had to go watch my NDSU Bison play football, so I didn't finish the project. Let's take this off, flip this over. We need another hole up here to run that screw in. Has this grommet on it, so I'll have to drill a hole right here big enough for that grommet. Take a quick measurement. So I have a mark on both sides, so I know where the center would be. So I need about that size or smaller. So I want to go to that one right there. I'll go that far and then I'll test it. You want that to be a snug fit so the water doesn't get in. So I need to get the screws in here, mount it down to here.
I had such a hard time starting this bolt, I had to back the others out to start this one. And finally we're plugging in the tail lights, and we're just going to leave the brake light in the back window loose. Finished, and I couldn't be happier than how it turned out. It was not that hard of a project, and it looks phenomenal.
Now that we've fulfilled my mom's dream of having that beautiful fin on the back of the Stealth, it's time to move to the inside and work on the radio. The original radio that came with the car, 30 years old, the thing's a tank. It gives you AM, FM radio stations, balancing, and that's it. It also came coupled with a tape deck. Now that tape deck, I kind of went down the road of maybe I could replace it with a Bluetooth player, and I'll give a little kind of feeling into what that was about. But I decided the easiest thing is just to replace it with the aftermarket radio. That's an $8.50 radio. But then the speakers weren't very good, and we went down a rabbit hole getting the speakers to work again. So ran into some problems, got them fixed, and got going. So let's have a look at that.
Not all coughs are the same. Buy Mucinex DM to get
The Window Nation Back to School Special.
So we got to take this panel off in order to replace the speaker that's contained in here. You would think this would come off easy, but it doesn't. So the hardest part about taking this panel off, getting this crank off of here. I looked it up, and there's a pin on here that has to come off. And the best suggestion is to take a cloth that's got little knit in it, and then floss it in and hook that pin to pull it out. So in case any of you have never taken a manual door handle off, this is what it looks like. Here's the pin that goes on it. You can see in there, these lock onto the shaft. So now that we have the crank off, we can start taking all the screws. Start over here, this last one. Once you have this panel, you can just pull each individual segment out. It comes out like that. 3 screws underneath. There's 2 screws at the end of the door. There's 1 screw in the door handle here. 2 screws here. You gotta pop the plastic cap off. So now this piece slides forward and out. Like that. Comes with these hooks right here. All right, that should be all the screws. Now I've got to unhook the light. This light was not working. We'll have to check the bulb on that before we put it back on. You can see these hooks go in here and here. And here's what the back side of the speaker looks like. This one physically looks in better shape than the other one, but no sound comes out of it. So 4 simple screws to take it out. It's probably in better shape because it hasn't worked. And by it not working, didn't enable somebody to blow it with loud music. Unhook this wire from back here. Let's just pop it off here first. So I plugged the new speaker in and nothing. And this light over here wasn't registering any power. So I traced it back to the socket here. And if you look in here, you'll see a whole bunch of busted wires. So it looks like I got some repair work to do. I would imagine a lot of these wires are for power locks and power windows. Well, we don't have either here. So we only need 4 wires, the door light and the speaker. So if I can figure out which one those are, I can get them fixed. So I've been trying to solder these two wires here, but they're so corroded that the solder won't stick. So we got a little vinegar and we're going to dab it on and see if that helps.
So one thing that I noticed about driving this car back from North Dakota was when I hit a jarring bump, the engine would turn off temporarily, like it was getting grounded out. And I'm almost wondering if this pile of wires here was part of the problem. I don't really know, but we'll see if it happens again now that I'm going to get them fixed. This was a very confined space to work. I found it best to pull the wires out as far as I could and hold them with the vice grip. Next, I took some helping hands, magnetic helping hands that I had from a soldering station and stuck them to the side of the car so I could use them to hold the wires. I then put the heat shrink tubing on what was left of the broken wires and soldered in a little patch piece because it was just too tight to get the old wires to be back together. Only one of the wires that I actually needed was not broke, so I had to do this over for 3 different wires. Then I pulled the heat shrink over, shrunk it, and then it was time to get the plug back into the door. Now I did a quick run to Walmart and picked up the replacements. The plug that came with the door had this weird perpendicular pin pattern, so I crimped on some new pins to a couple wires and then just made an adapter for it. So much better. I had one final detail to take care of before I put the door back on. Part of the fabric on the door was coming off, so I used some adhesive spray, taped everything off. I didn't want any adhesive on anything else, sprayed it, and it turned out perfect.
Here's the original stereo that I took out of the car. It had a factory tape deck and a radio that came with it. The display was no longer illuminating and the tape deck would not eject correctly. So definitely wanted to replace it with a newer style, but first I wanted to do an experiment. I took and I removed the old tape deck out of the actual deck itself, and then I soldered a Bluetooth audio receiver and soldered that back onto the motherboard. Then I was able to transmit the audio signal back into the original stereo. I wanted to give the original stereo the ability to play Bluetooth music. And it all kind of worked, except for I could still hear the radio station playing with the Bluetooth playing at the same time, kind of mixing it together. There had to be an original way that the tape deck told the radio to turn the radio off and only play the music coming from the tape deck. However, I wasn't able to figure this out and I gave up. And now let's look at the new stereo that I put in. So here's the finished stereo, $8.50 stereo off of Amazon. And to replace the tape deck, I just put a cubby hole in there.
Congratulations to Kelly. He's got 1,000.
So it sounds much better now in here. There are speakers in the back. I will probably replace those at a different date, but it requires the total removal of the back seats and seat belts in order to get it out. So project for a later date. So now that we have a good sound system in the car, or what acts like a good sound system in the car, it's time to let's start delving into the detailing of the car. There's some dings and dents in the car, and also some discolorant over time. There's also some paint problems, but we'll probably won't have time to work at that this time. So let's get into some detailing techniques to make this car look a lot better.
So when it came to the old and faded plastic, I used a ceramic coating. I applied this using a sponge. It gives it a very nice protective sheen and also restores it so it looks more new and back to the original state. Applied this to the fenders, I applied it to the door jambs, and also on around the bumper, and I am very, very happy with the way it turned out. The front bumper was a little different. Instead of the plastic being molded in, it looks like it's part of the bumper itself. to which they just clear coated. So I'm going to leave it the way it is. On the back bumper, it looks like all the clear coat has been scuffed off of it or worn off after time. So my goal here is to do the ceramic coating on all that. So the final step I want to get to is removing this dent. I have purchased for $40 from Amazon a dent removal kit. So we'll try the different elements of this dent removal kit and see if we can't get that dent removed. First impressions of this dent removal kit is the glue gun. First thing is the trigger doesn't do anything or engage. It's coming apart at the top, and after being plugged in for 10 minutes, the glue came out white and cold. That part's a piece of crap. Well, that was startling. So far, that didn't do a lot. It's looking better. Let me get the glue off. So it's getting smaller. However, right in the center here, there's still a dimple. So let's try her once more with a much smaller top. Now that didn't do anything. So far, not all that impressed. So we've detailed the car. It looks phenomenal. Well, for 30-year-old, it looks phenomenal. I think I'm going to cut the video off here, but there's more to do. There's some paint issues that I would love to address, but now you're getting a little more time consuming than just an afternoon in the garage. So we'll call this phase 1. Make sure to subscribe, and maybe in phase 2 we'll look at it. But in the end, this is my mom's 30-year-old car, the Dodge Stealth. I know when I show her this over Thanksgiving, she is just going to love the fact that she got to see this car with that fin in her lifetime. And that is what means the most to me. And not only that, this car is now being used by a 3rd generation. So with that, I hope you guys tune in and enjoyed this episode. I'll catch you in the next.